Indigenous-led conservation efforts. Indigenous communities around the world have been at the forefront of conservation efforts, protecting biodiversity, restoring ecosystems, and fighting for sustainable land management. Unlike many modern conservation approaches that separate people from nature, Indigenous conservation recognizes that humans are part of the ecosystem and have a responsibility to care for it. This section will explore examples of successful Indigenous conservation projects, how traditional knowledge informs modern ecological restoration, collaborations between Indigenous groups and global conservation organizations, examples of successful Indigenous conservation projects. Many Indigenous communities have developed long-standing conservation practices that ensure the protection of ecosystems while maintaining their way of life. Below are some notable case studies of Indigenous-led conservation projects. Xingu Indigenous Park, Brazil. What is it? A 26,000 square kilometer protected area in the Brazilian Amazon, home to over 16 Indigenous groups, including the Kayapo, Turco, and Kamayura. Conservation efforts. Indigenous communities patrol the forest borders to prevent illegal logging, ranching, and mining. Traditional fire management techniques are used to prevent destructive wildfires. Sustainable fishing and farming practices maintain biodiversity and food security. Impact: one of the last large intact forest areas in the Amazon. Resists deforestation and provides a model for Indigenous land stewardship. Haida Gwaii Stewardship, Canada. What is it? A remote island chain off the coast of British Columbia, home to the Haida Nation. Conservation efforts. Haida leaders fought against large-scale logging to protect old-growth forests. Traditional clam gardens and kelp forests were restored to promote marine biodiversity. The Haida have co-managed Gwaii Hanas National Park, ensuring their laws and traditions shape conservation policy. Impact: the Haida won legal recognition of their land rights and now co-manage protected areas. A thriving marine and forest ecosystem that sustains both biodiversity and Indigenous culture. The Masai Mara Land Conservation, Kenya and Tanzania. What is it? The Maasai people have lived in the East African savanna for centuries, coexisting with wildlife. Conservation efforts. Instead of traditional national parks that exclude local communities, the Maasai created conservancies where people and wildlife coexist. Rotational grazing practices prevent overgrazing and maintain healthy grasslands. The Maasai Rangers help track and protect endangered species, including lions and elephants. Impact: increased populations of lions, elephants, and rhinos. Sustainable livelihoods for Maasai communities through ecotourism and conservation jobs. How traditional knowledge informs modern ecological restoration. Indigenous knowledge systems have guided land management for thousands of years. Scientists and environmentalists are now recognizing that many modern conservation problems can be solved using traditional ecological knowledge. Controlled burns and fire management. Example: the Yurok and Karok tribes, California, USA. For centuries, Indigenous peoples in California used controlled burns to reduce underbrush and prevent large wildfires. European colonization banned these practices, leading to catastrophic wildfires. Today, California is reintroducing Indigenous fire management to prevent future fires. Key lesson: Indigenous fire practices prevent mega fires, regenerate ecosystems, and improve soil fertility. Agroforestry and soil restoration. Example: the Maya Milpa system, Mexico, Belize, Guatemala. The Maya developed a sustainable farming system called milpa, rotating crops like maize, beans, and squash. Instead of clear-cutting forests, they practiced swidden, slash-and-burn agriculture in small, controlled areas and allowed the land to recover. Research shows that the ancient Maya farmlands still have higher soil fertility than industrially farmed areas. Key lessons: indigenous crop rotation and agroforestry techniques restore soil health and increase biodiversity. Marine conservation and fisheries management. Example, the Rawai system, Cook Islands, Polynesia. Indigenous Polynesians created marine protected areas centuries ago. The Rawai zones are areas where fishing is restricted for several months or years, allowing fish populations to recover. Scientists have found that fish populations increase significantly in these areas. Key lesson: indigenous fishing bans and marine conservation methods help rebuild fish stocks and ensure food security. Collaborations between indigenous groups and global conservation organizations. Many indigenous-led conservation projects receive support and recognition from global organizations such as the United Nations, World Wildlife Fund, and the Nature Conservancy. Indigenous protected areas in Australia. Indigenous Australians manage national parks under joint governance agreements. The Rangers program employs Indigenous people to monitor wildlife, conduct prescribed burns, and remove invasive species. The Australian government and global NGOs fund Indigenous conservation initiatives. Impact: over 50 Indigenous protected areas covering millions of hectares of land. The Amazon Sacred Headwaters Initiative, Ecuador and Peru. A coalition of indigenous nations, including the Ashwar, Shuar, and Quichua, is fighting to protect 80 million acres of Amazon rainforest from mining and deforestation. Partnering with global conservation groups, they have blocked all drilling projects and secured legal rights to their land. They are reforesting degraded areas and using sustainable ecotourism as an alternative to resource extraction. Impact: Indigenous-led protection of one of the world's most biodiverse rainforests. The Arctic Council's Indigenous inclusion. The Inuit, Sami, and other Arctic Indigenous groups are now official members of the Arctic Council, an international forum focused on Arctic conservation. Indigenous knowledge about ice, wildlife, and climate change is now being incorporated into global climate policies. Impact: governments now consult Indigenous leaders when creating policies about climate change and Arctic development. Conclusion: Indigenous peoples are not just stakeholders in conservation. They are leaders in protecting the planet. Their traditional ecological knowledge provides proven solutions to modern environmental challenges. Key takeaways: Indigenous-led conservation projects protect millions of acres of forests, oceans, and grasslands worldwide. Traditional knowledge systems offer innovative solutions for fire management, soil restoration, and marine conservation. Global partnerships with Indigenous groups are increasing, but true conservation success requires Indigenous communities to lead, not just participate.